Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto has golden haki in One Piece. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by daistaf and link in the description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1 Satoka Island. Captain of the Marines, Namikaze Minato, smiled after seeing the outskirts of his old home, the Satoka Island. He had left his island more than 8 months ago, having received a secret mission from the world government, and now he was back. And just imaging the smile that would be plastered on his son's face after discovering that his father was back sooner than planned, a grin formed on his own handsome face. Little Naruto was like a bundle of energy. Always jumping and running around, just like his mother. Minato sighed and leaned on the board of his ship with a melancholic expression. Kushina, oh how he missed her gentle smile, her endless confidence in him, her joy at being a mother, the joy that W was taken away from her too early. Those damned pirates, how could they have attacked a pregnant woman just because she was the wife of a marine captain? How could they do such an atrocious act? The blonde Namikaze closed his eyes and hung his head down. It didn't matter anymore. They have paid the price with their lives in the end. He made sure of it. And that was the day that people began calling him the Thunder God. He had after all decimated 168 pirates in a span of mere seconds with the use of the haki technique he had developed, the Hiraishin. He wasn't very proud of himself that day, but in his heart he knew he had enjoyed the feel of their filthy blood on his hands. Revenge was a terrible thing. Captain, you have a call from the world government. A marine said, approaching the blonde coming. Minato said and followed his subordinate in the captain room. Once he was near the den mushi, he took in hand the microphone and spoke. Here is Captain Namikaze, I'm listening. Oh, Captain. So the mission was a success then. A voice stated through the den. Indeed, Mr. Jashiro Akano. But I still can't understand why you insisted on me and my crew to return to Satoka Island. Wasn't it easier and safer to deliver it to you directly? The blonde asked. I assure you, all is ready. Do not worry yourself, Captain, my men will come for the items very soon. Akano said. Until then, guard them preciously. You can count on me, sir. Minato replied. Perfect. Then I will not delay you any further from seeing your young son, Captain. Good day. You too, sir. The Namikaze said before hanging the microphone. The young father frowned a little. All that was really strange. Something was amiss, but he couldn't figure out what. Well, maybe was it paranoia. With a sigh he left the room and walked toward the front of the ship. Finally he was home. The little 7-year-old blonde boy was running toward the coast. He had seen a marine ship approach the island when he was training on the top of the little mountain of Satoka, and that could mean only one thing. His father was back from the mission 1 week earlier than planned. And that was just awesome. That way he would be able to show his father just how strong he had become. With a face-splitting grin, he accelerated even more, rising dust behind him, making the villagers smile. Already being used to the little troublemaker's antics, suddenly a voice interrupted him in his footing. Hey Naru-chan. Catch this. The little blonde's eyes widened as he narrowly evaded the bottle that was going straight toward his head by bending backwards. That of course made him stumble, and he fell painfully on the ground with a thick mark on his forehead. He stood up and pointed his index finger toward an old man that was sitting on a stool with an exaggerated innocent look on his face. You old coot. The blonde yelled, breathing heavily. The man in question wasn't looking like anything special. He had short gray hair with a mustache, a slightly lean build, which was a little strange for his age. He wore a green jacket with a white t-shirt underneath, black cargo pants and a pair of sandals. The most peculiar thing about him though was his long scar that ran from his right eye to the end of his neck and of course his piercing green eyes. That old man was Denkoku Kanahaza, the most annoying old man in the whole village. He was an ex-admiral too, though. His father always told him that Denkoku was an extremely powerful man, but he never believed it. Maybe he was, a long time ago. But, duh. The man was a fossil. Naruto was sure he could kick his ass if he wanted. His father always asked the old Kanahaza to look after Naruto when he had to leave for a mission. And the blonde could remember the old man's face since his very birth. He was always here to look after him when his father was away. And to speak frankly, Denkoku was a good old man and he loved him very much. But his crazy training methods were well crazy. Who in their right mind would send a bottle of rum at a 5-year-old boy, saying it was to increase his reflexes? Yeah, who? 2 years of this training made him paranoid at seeing a bottle in someone's hand. That was a good dodge, Naru-chan. But your footwork still has many flaws, the old man said with a smile. Stop calling me Naru-chan, Denko Jiji. I'm not a kid anymore, I'm a man. Naruto exclaimed with haha. Go then, little man, your father is at the coast, right? See ya. And with that he dashed toward the port. Not long after, he arrived before the big marine ship. The little blonde smiled at the other kids who were watching in awe as the Captain Thunder God Namikaze Minato left the ship and walked toward them. "Oh-to-san," Naruto cried out before dashing toward his father. Naruto. Minato said with a big smile on his face. Have you been a good boy in my absence? Sure I was. I'm even stronger than before. Let's go. I'll show you. Alright, let's go. His father said before turning toward his subordinates. 10 men will be guarding the ship, the other can go in the village and rest a bit. You'll shift every 3 hours, yes sir. His crew cried out before doing what their captain ordered. Father and son walked through the small village, with Minato greeting his old friends and Naruto talking excitedly about everything. Finally they arrived before their house, a little 2-story house, made entirely of wood. There, at the door someone was waiting for them. Denkoku Dono. Minato said with a little bow. How did Naruto behave? Not very manly I hope. He continued with a smile. To say the truth, he exceeded my expectations. He is much quicker and stronger than 8 months ago. His learning pace is remarkable. The old man answered, is that so? The young father asked, turning toward his son, who was beaming at him. Well, then I think a reward is in due. Naruto. What do you say about ramen? Yeah. Ramen. The blonde cried out, bouncing up and down. Alright, go run toward the stand and begin eating, I'll arrive shortly after. The captain said. And seeing the frown on his son's face, continued. I just have to talk to Denkoku Dono, don't worry. And that way you could eat even more ramen. Okay, Naruto exclaimed and ran away. Minato watched his son run with a smile and turned toward the old man. His smile slid slowly and he mentioned for Kanahaza to go inside. And once they were seated comfortably on the couch, the old man began. What do you have here? He said, pointing the little package in the captain's hands. We have them, all of them? The old man asked, surprised. Yes. All of them. I even found another, but no one knows about it. Even my crew. Why is that? Denkoku asked. But then answered his own question. Naruto. Indeed. Which one? Tsuchi no Mi. Minato replied calmly. Tsuchi. It's one of the rarest. How you found it? An old woman gave it to me when we were in Fushia village. An old woman gave it to you. One of the rarest devil fruits. How did you even find she had one? I didn't know. I was drinking in a bar, we were quite exhausted. When suddenly an old woman sat across from me and put a box on the table. She said, this will help your family, Namek is Minato, and then after drinking a glass of something, she disappeared. Denkoku was frowning. That was more than strange. To give a devil fruit without even asking for money in return was unheard of. She said your family, not you. And I found it strange. I'm sure she was speaking of Naruto. Minato mumbled, not really paying attention. Anyway, I will not give this one to Akano. The 23 I've found should be enough. Take it. The younger man said, putting a little wooden box on the table. Keep it somewhere safe. You are training Naruto more than me, even if I would have liked it to be otherwise. You'll know when he will be ready for it as you wish. Don't worry, I care for that knucklehead as much as you do. I'll make a great warrior out of him. Denkoku said with a smile. Yeah, well, don't overdo it, okay. The captain said with a smile, scratching the back of his head. Don't worry, you came quite strong out of it, haven't you? The old man replied, that was exactly why I was saying it, Minato said with a roll of his eyes. Well, I have to go. Naruto must have already eaten 30 bowls by now, and with that he left the Hasiya. Otu-san, when will you teach me the Hiraishin? Asked an excited Naruto, eating his 17th bowl. You're still too young for such a technique, Naru-chan. Your body is not strong enough for haki. The little blonde pouted for a few seconds, and then a large grin formed on his face. Then I'll train even harder, and you'll train me then. Alright, that's a promise. And I never go back on my word. Naruto. Minato said with a smile. Yeah. Suddenly the door to the small restaurant slammed open and a marine officer ran toward the two blondes. Captain. We are under attack. 19 pirate ships are nearing the coast. What? Minato shouted. Why in heaven's name pirates were coming to Satoka? That was ridiculous. There was nothing here. Oh god. The cargo. They were after the cargo. Damn it. Evacuate the village toward the mountain, quickly. Yes, sir. The man said and ran away. Naruto, listen to me. The young captain said, turning toward his son. Go home as quickly as you can and find Denkoku Dono. Take some provisions and leave toward the mountain with the others. We will try and stop them from destroying the village, but knowing pirates, I'm not sure that they will show mercy. He turned toward the still gaping costumers in the restaurant and with a commanding voice spoke up. Leave the restaurant. Don't take time to take many things from your homes. Take only the essential. Leave, before it's too late. People began leaving hurriedly the building, pushing one another. Finally he looked back and saw his son still there, unmoving. Why are you still here? I said run. I will not leave you alone. I will fight with you. Naruto, this isn't a game. You are in danger here and I don't know what I will do if I lose you. Don't make it harder for me, son. This is a mission I'm giving to you as a captain to a future marine officer. I'm counting on you to protect and take care of the village. Now go. Minato said with an unflinching gaze. Naruto nodded and smiled a little. He approached his father and gave him a hug. Kick their asses, Otu-san. And with that he ran away. A grim look took place on the captain's face. Now was time to protect the island and make sure that his mission was a success. With a little burst of haki, he disappeared and seconds later was at the harbor. Quickly going toward the captain's quarters on his ship, he took the den mushi and called the boss. Captain Namikaze. I'm listening, sir. The island is under attack. 19 pirate ships are nearing the coast. We need assistance. Send backups. Assistance? Why? Are there not enough of you to deal with mere little bandits? The voice said slowly, as if enjoying tormenting the Namikaze. Isn't the great thunder god enough to stop an attack? Yes, sir. I may be a captain, but my crew and myself will not be enough to deal with 19 ships. We need backups. Minato cried out. Without speaking about the cargo. They discovered its contents somehow. There must be a leak in the marine. A leak, you say? You're mostly right, Captain. There is a leak. Akano said with a laugh. What? The world government wish you the best of luck, nahahaha. And with that the connection was cut. With an angry cry, the captain launched the den away and stormed of the room. Damn it. Damn it all to hell. What in heaven's name was happening? Because he was sure that Akano was the leak and it wasn't like hadn't made it oblivious. One thing was sure though, he had to protect the island from those pirates and he had to make sure they didn't put their slimy hands on the cargo. With another burst of haki, he disappeared from the side and reappeared with a large wooden box in his hands. Months worth of hard work were in that box. 23 incredible items that could grant their user inhuman powers. 23 devil fruits were sealed in it. The 23 fruits that the bastard Akano made them search through all the Grand Line. He couldn't let the pirates take them. The world didn't need any more dangerous people with destructive powers wreaking havoc. There was already enough. What could he do? Hide them somewhere? No, maybe destroy them. That could work, but that would mean that everything they've done during those 8 months was a waste of time and energy. Well, his crew would understand. Minato opened the wooden chest and looked at its content, 23 strange-looking fruits. With resignation, he drew his handmade 3-bladed dagger and cut every fruit to pieces. Without a second thought, he threw them abroad and put down the box. Captain, they arrived. An officer said prepare the WT move and make sure they don't discover it before time. The Namikaze said, with a hard look on his face. Yes, sir. Well, then let's meet them. Not long after, one of the ships approached the harbor, letting the others behind, some hundreds yards away. It was immense, painted golden, and with a familiar Jolly Roger, one that hadn't been seen for a long time, a white skull with a golden mane and a steering wheel behind it, and once the ship was docked, a lone man stepped out. But that wasn't an ordinary man. He was massive, dressed in an orange, red and black robe, with a golden chain around his waist. He had a long orange striped coat. His long blonde hair was like a mane around his head, with the most peculiar thing about him being the half of a steering wheel incrusted in his head. And of course the 2 sabers he had instead of legs. The price to pay for his escape from Impel. Down there stood Shiki, the golden lion, with a large grin. One of the most powerful pirates in the world, and the first and only pirate that escaped Impel. Down to what do I owe the pleasure of seeing you here, Shiki, the golden lion? Asked Minato, with a raised eyebrow. After 2 years of complete silence, why show yourself now? Captain Namikaze, the Thunder God. It's nice to meet you. The pirate said with a little snicker, not answering the question. The feeling isn't mutual. Oh, how rude of you. What do you want? This little island has nothing important that may interest you. My sources said otherwise, Captain. Shiki said, making the Namikaze frown. And what did your sources said to you? That a little cargo will interest me. A certain box with 23 items. The pirate said. You know what I mean. I'm not sure of understanding what you are talking about, Shiki. Your old age must be catching up to you. A box with 23 items that could interest a pirate of your caliber, here, on Satoka Island. What nonsense. Don't try to fool me, boy. You weren't even born when I was crushing marines under my feet. And, irritated Shiki said. Feet that you don't have anymore, Minato said with a smirk. Insolent brat. Give me the box that contains the 23 devil fruits and I will leave without completely destroying this good-for-nothing island. The pirate exclaimed, getting angry despite his usually calm head. Then you can leave now, because I don't have the fruits anymore. What do you mean, you don't have them anymore? Shiki asked, even more annoyed than before. Well, I, sort of, destroyed the fruits before you arrived. Minato said, causing the pirate's eyes to widen. When I spotted your ships nearing, I instantaneously knew you were coming for them. How you discovered of their existence is a good question, though. Even if I have a major idea about who let escape such secret information, why you destroyed them. 23 devil fruits. Are you out of your mind? The pirate cried out angrily. I prefer to destroy months worth of work than to give it to you. Minato calmly said. Arg. Damn brat. You got me on this one. But don't worry, you will pay for it. I'll destroy the whole island. And everyone with it. I don't think so. And why so, little boy? Do you think you can stop me? A chuckling Shiki asked. I'm not a fool. I know that you're way out of my league. After all, Vice Admiral Garp and Head Admiral Sengoku had to fight together to stop you indeed. But I never said I wouldn't try though, Minato said, before disappearing in a burst of speed and appearing just before Shiki and delivering a jaw-shattering punch to the pirate's head. The said pirate was sent flying toward one of the houses, shattering its wall. A laugh could be heard from the rumbles, and an unharmed Shiki emerged from them. Not bad, brat. But you have to hit stronger if you hope to defeat me. Don't worry, it was just the beginning. Minato said with a serious face. I have a little advantage over my elders that fought you. Oh, and what is it? Your weakness, Minato said, making the pirate captain frown. Your power works only on things that you touch with your hands. And if I can be quicker than you and evade your hands, I will be able to stop you, but you have to have such a speed. I may not have a devil fruit power, but my prowess with the Abusashoku haki is close to unique. Only 3 know how to counter it, and you are not one of them. The Namikaze said, before putting his left leg behind and raising his right hand into a fist toward Shiki. I will not let you destroy this island, Jai, ha 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 ha. Well then, Captain. Come and get me, Shiki said, and with a wave of his hand, the earth to his right rose and was launched toward the blonde at high speed with hardened eyes. Minato crouched, as if preparing to jump, and disappeared from view, escaping the attack, only to appear behind the pirate and deliver an extremely quick right hook to Shiki's head, making the older man fly toward now another house. When the golden lion emerged from the smoke, he had bruises all over his head and an angry and incredulous look on his face. Shiki watched Minato's fists to see them enveloped in a blue energy cloak. Was it what you were talking about, Namikaze? Not quite. That's just a move I created with the haki, the Rasengan. I channel my energy around my fists and make it rotate at an incredible rate. The power boost that the haki gives its user is multiplied by 10 by the swirling motion of the attack. It can cut off anything. And seeing as you are only slightly bruised after it, I can see why you were considered one of the strongest pirates of the era. I'm still one of them, you little brat. Shiki huffed. I'll admit, I underestimated you, you are strong. But the game ends here. And with that he touched the ground at his feet, and with a motion of his hand, large chunks of earth began tearing from the ground, destroying the vicinity. And with a wave of his right hand, the pirate sent everything at his disposition to the young marine captain, and not waiting for his attack to strike home, he began flying toward Minato with his hands outstretched. The Namikaze began destroying the rapidly approaching flying chunks with his fists, and when he was sure that Shiki was near enough to touch him, he disappeared with a burst of speed, escaping the pirate's grasp and making him hit the ground, by those creating a big explosion with a sneer. The golden lion stood up from the large crater he created and took a little den mushy scarlet. Begin the attack. Level this village to the ground. He said alright, Shiki. Then he turned toward the captain that was on the roof of a house, 20 yards away. You are very quick. Your speed is remarkable, but once my boys begin destroying this island, with all the chinks of destroyed houses and ground flying around, under my control, you will be unable to dodge all of it. You may be quick, but you're not that quick. Shiki said with a smirk. And when I'll touch you, the fight will be over. And as if on cue, cannonballs began crashing on the village, destroying everything they touched. With a cry, Minato disappeared in a burst of speed, only to appear to Shiki's left. But the old pirate was waiting for that exact move, and when Minato was only inches from him, a long dagger emerged from the ground underneath him and flied toward him at an even greater speed than the captain himself. The blonde's eyes widened as he saw the weapon approach his torso in slow motion, then surprising the golden lion, Minato disappeared, but this time with a yellow flash, the captain appeared 200 yards away, breathing heavily. Damn it. That one was too close, he said, clutching his side, where blood was escaping from a cut. I shouldn't have underestimated his speed. I should have used the Hurration from the beginning. Damn me and my ego. Hey, that was remarkable, Captain. Shiki said, surprising the blonde that hadn't sensed him approach. You can move very quick. After all, playtime is over. I will show you why I was called the Thunder God. The Namikaze cried out over the noise the cannonballs destroying the village. Then Minato began running towards Shiki, and with a burst of speed he disappeared again, to reappear behind the pirate, and then he disappeared again to reappear to the pirate's side. He continued doing that for a little long, with each time going faster and faster. Then one of a sudden he vanished in a golden flash. Shiki wondered where he was after not seeing him reappear, when his question was answered for him by an explosion some hundreds yards away, where his ships were. He could see the captain had completely cut through one of his ships, only to vanish again and reappear near a second ship, cutting it in half with his fist, like the previous. No, that couldn't be, could it? Thought the golden lion. No, no, no. He began flying toward his ships at a breakneck speed. He had to stop that fool from destroying his fleet. But it was to no avail, because when he arrived near enough, his last ship began sinking, like the others, with a large human-size hole on its lower part. Arg. Shiki cried out. That brat. How could a mere captain of marines destroy his whole fleet under his nose? He looked back to the island and then spotted the blonde reappear on the coast, on his knees. "You will pay," the golden lion said before flying back toward the captain at an incredible speed, surpassing any that he showed before. Rising his hands forward, he made a large part of the island rise in the air, shadowing half of Satoka, and with a thrust, made it fall forward, creating an unimaginable explosion that destroyed 3/4 of the said island, leaving only the little mountain intact. When he finally arrived, he saw that the blonde captain was crouching, his breath ragged, sweat running down his face, but with a little smirk that unnerved the pirate. "My crew specialization is suicidal missions," Minato said with a smirk. "And I think you can agree, after what you saw. That was quite suicidal, don't you think?" And seeing that the pirate wouldn't talk, he continued. "The code name of what you just saw is WT Move, but its real name is Hiracian. And it was for that technique that I was called Thunder God," he continued with a laugh. "I wasn't able to protect the village from you, but you have to agree, you never thought you would lose your fleet in the weakest of seas, for the second time, have you? You're strong, kid. Very strong. Why you aren't a vice admiral is beyond me," Shiki said calmly, igniting the cigar in his mouth. "But now you are completely exhausted. And you wouldn't be able to repeat that technique of yours, I know it. And you know it too. Time has come for you to die, and I'm sorry to end the life of such a prodigious young man. But you have to pay for what you have done to me. I'm glad my son isn't here to see me die. It would be a shame," Minato said. "I'm ready, Shiki. Let's do it. One last attack." "I'm not asking for more," the golden lion said and began raising in the air everything in his vicinity. Minato, as for himself, was pushing every ounce of his energy in his right hand, making his whole arm shine strongly in a white light. The Namikaze concentrated. His resolve was unbreakable. He would push at his limits and beyond to defeat Shiki, or he will die trying. His only regret was that he couldn't be there for Naruto. It was tearing his heart apart, knowing that his little blonde sunshine would become an orphan. Losing once again a parent to pirates, Denkoku Dono would take care of him. He had promised it after all. But even knowing that his son would be in good hands, he couldn't throw away the growing need to abandon and flee the fight. No. He was a marine captain. He had to protect the world from pirates such as Shiki. He couldn't leave now, he had to protect them, he had to protect Naruto. But that, he disappeared from sight as Shiki began flying toward him, unleashing hell on earth in front of him, and just when Minato's resolve was near unbreakable, a little distraction caused his shell to crumble in mere seconds. "Otu-san!" cried a voice from afar, and then there was a great explosion. When the smoke cleared, the sight was fearsome. There stood Shiki, the golden lion with a gaping hole in his shoulder, blood flowing rapidly out of it. The sword that was in his right hand, missing some feet away from him, stood Namikaze Minato, the thunder god, with the said sword in his chest, completely piercing through his heart, blood dripping from his right hand, Shiki's blood, and blood flowing from his wounds. Suddenly, his legs gave out and he fell to his knees. "Nu!" cried the same voice as before, at seeing the scene before his eyes. And suddenly a blonde boy began running toward them, his speed augmenting with each step. Finally, when he was only some feet away from the pirate, he jumped in the air, launching his fist toward the golden lion, who dodged the strike by jumping away. And that was a good thing, because when the boy touched the ground, he created a large crater, making spiderwebs around it. Seeing that the pirate had escaped his attack, he cried out, creating a massive shockwave that would have knocked out anyone under captain level of power. Shiki smirked. "Hashoku Haki HN. The boy was really his father's son. Time to end his life." And with that he launched himself toward the boy, only for him to disappear, and seeing the surprised look on the boy's face before he disappeared, someone else had saved him. Minato sighed in relief. "Thank you, Denkoku Dono," he thought with a smile. "A strong son you have here, Captain," the old pirate said. "He will be a fine entertainment once he is older, that is, if you survive this," the marine captain said, coughing blood before clasping his hands together. "What is it now?" Shiki asked, slowly walking toward the blonde, when suddenly his eyes widened in shock. He knew this move. "Escape this!" Minato cried out, and in a blink of an eye, everything a mile around was caught in the blast of the most powerful explosion until now, leveling it to the ground. Taking the marine captain Namikaze Minato, the thunder god's life along with Shiki, the golden lion, there was complete silence until a slow sound of a metal scraping on the ground was heard. Chapter 2, The Vow. After what seemed like an eternity, but in reality was only a few seconds, Naruto finally felt the solid ground beneath his legs. And when he was sure that they wouldn't disappear again, he turned toward the old man and with a killer-worth glare, approached him. "Bring me back," he cried out. "Bring me back to Otu-san. I have to help him." "You can't do anything," the older man said, turning away. "But you can. You're an ex-admiral. You have to help Otu-san." "I can't." "Why? Why not?" exclaimed the little boy, getting angrier with every second. "He is dead, he is dead, Naruto," Denkoku said, turning toward the blonde, with tears in his eyes. "No. I don't believe you. Bring me back, bring me back," the little Namikaze said, falling to his knees. No, his Otu-san, he couldn't be dead. He was the powerful thunder god. No one could have bested him. He couldn't be dead, not now, not after he lost his Akusen at his very birth. No. Arg. He cried out. You could have helped him. If you had fought that pirate together, you would have won. And he wouldn't have died. We both would have died. I may have been an admiral at one time, but I'm old now. And Shiki, he is one of the most powerful pirates in the world. We wouldn't be able to win against him, and you would be left alone with no one to watch after you, but I promised that I would protect you. I couldn't go fight that pirate alongside Minato. He made me promise I couldn't let him down. You should have broken the promise. You should have tried. But you fled like a coward. The angry Naruto exclaimed, shut up. Do you think it was easy for me to leave? Minato, his was like a son to me. I knew him since he was a mere little boy. I taught him all I knew. I protected him. I loved him. Do you think it was easy to leave him there without helping? I would have preferred to die alongside him. But I made a promise. And I never go back on my words. The young blonde hung his head and he began sobbing. His father would have said that he was a little crybaby, that he should stop crying, that men don't cry, but he couldn't stop himself. He was a 7-year-old boy, not a man. With an exhausted sigh, Denkoku stuck his shovel in the ground to his right. Finally he was done. After a whole day, he was finally done. Just looking at his handiwork, he could feel tears coming to his eyes, but he shut them and tightened his fists. He would not cry. With another sigh, he walked a few steps and sat down on the ground just in front of 2 graves. At the right, there was the one Minato had done for his wife after she died. Namikaze Uzumaki Kushina. Just to its right, the one he had done himself for his adopted son, Namikaze Minato, the thunder god. He sighed again. They had died too young. They didn't deserve to die at such a young age. The poor Naruto was still under shock of what happened. To lose the last remaining member of his family before high eyes was a terrible thing. He hadn't uttered a word since that day. Damn those pirates for doing such atrocious things, and damn the world government for letting it happen. Don't worry, Minato, I will make one hell of a warrior from Naruto. You'll be proud. The old ex-admiral said before vanishing in a yellow flash from the top of the little mountain of Satoka Island. The island that was no longer inhabited, all its villagers having left for a safer place, hit harder. Harder, Denkoku cried out to the young boy that was furiously punching a large rock. You can't even make a dent in it. Harder, I said. Arg. Naruto cried out and began hitting the rock even harder despite the unbearable pain in his fists that were completely covered with his blood. The damn rock was still intact even after 1 hour of his furious punches. Any other 7-year-old boy would have given up a long time ago, but he wasn't one of them. He couldn't. In those 5 months with Denkoku, on the mountain of an unknown island in the East Blue, he learned to never give up and to never turn away from a challenge. Right now, the old man had said that he had to destroy that rock with his bare hands, and he would be damned if he backed away. He will not stop, even if he would have to continue to punch the rock for a week. The old Kanahaza watched his little protege execute the exercise without questions and smiled. The boy was remarkable, his drive was unstoppable. Then, he saw Naruto make a little dent in the rock and a smirk forming on his young face before he unleashed even more furious punches on it. Yes, he was doing fine. Slowly, a shadowy figure approached the bed with a young blonde boy in it, rising a knife in the air and lowered his hand in a stabbing motion when suddenly, the boy's cerulean eyes snapped open and he uttered a single word. Thekai, and on contact with the boy's skin, the knife broke in two. Not losing time, the blonde used his bed to roll backward and deliver a powerful kick to his assailant's face, making him stumble back. Soru. The boy said, before disappearing from sight. A second later he appeared at the other end of the room, crouching horizontally on the wall, before jumping forward, using the wall to launch himself. And when he was halfway the distance, he made a motion with his legs, as if he was using the very air to accelerate, uttering a quiet geppo. The result was remarkable, as he was launched forward like a bullet with his right hand outstretched. The assailant smirked under his hood and prepared for the hit. When the young boy was only inches from him, in a remarkable show of speed, he took hold of the boy's outstretched hand and using his own velocity, launched him toward the wall. The said wall couldn't take on such an attack, so the outcome was logical. The boy literally flew through the wall, creating a large hole in it. The hooded figure emerged from the house through the door and walked toward the boy, which was laying on his back, watching the sky with a frown. And before the assailant could utter a word, the boy spoke up. I should have used the Rankyaku indeed, Naruto. You can't attack someone with a speed technique without knowing if your speed is really greater than theirs. Denkoku said, lowering his hood. Despite that mistake, the flow of your attacks was quite good. Say, Denko Jiji, why don't you allow me to use the haki? The 10-year-old asked, standing up. I already answered that many times, Naru-chan. You just said I wasn't ready. But you never explained why. It's better to learn the haki after a certain age cap. The old man said, turning away. After your 13th birthday, I'll start teaching it to you age cap. What age cap? Come on Gigi. Shut up. The Kanahaza said, tapping the blonde on the head. For that outburst, you'll do 100 laps around the mountain. And, without using the Rakishiki. Naruto sighed and began slowly trotting away, mumbling something about crazy Gigi's a 13 years old. Naruto dodged a quick hook to his face by sidestepping and jumped over the sweep that followed it. Not losing his momentum, he launched his own kick toward Denkoku's head, adding a great amount of haki to it. The old man rose his left hand and countered the blow, but the force behind it actually made him slide several yards back. With a smirk, the blonde launched himself forward with a geppo, and when he was only a few feet from Denkoku, he surprised the ex-admiral by hitting the ground before him and splitting the ground under the old man, instead of trying to hit the man himself, making the said old man stumble. That was all Naruto needed, because the next instant, he disappeared with a Soru and delivered a powerful haki charge punch to Denkoku's stomach, making him slide a good 30 yards back. Holding his wound in pain, Naruto smirked at his victory, but that was short-lived because not a second later, his grandfather vanished from view. The blonde's eyes widened and he cursed his stupidity and braced himself for the hit to come. And he hadn't to wait for long because he was propelled backward after a quite painful punch to his face. And being unable to stop himself, he activated Tekai to reduce the damage, and it was a good thing he did because the speed with which he hit the tree would have probably broken several of his ribs. Damn it. Again, the same mistake. Denkoku said, sitting on the branch of a tree a few yards away. If you want an advantage over your opponents, always be ready with Kenbun-shoku haki. You can't just use it for a few seconds and then drop it. Let's continue, bring it on, old man. Naruto exclaimed before disappearing with Soru. Smart-ass Denkoku whispered before vanishing himself. The both of them were seating outside the little house they had built from scraps, breathing heavily. They were completely exhausted after fighting the whole day. Naruto had finally began using the color of observation for a prolonged period of time and triggering it was becoming easier. Hey Gigi. The blonde spoke up. What is it, Naru-chan? Han, can you bring me to Satoka? The Namikaze asked, still staring in the distance. Denkoku nodded and stood up, followed by the boy. And after putting his right hand on Naruto's shoulder, they disappeared in a yellow flash. Once they touched the ground, the blonde walked forward and stooped before two tombs. His parents' tombs. It has been 6 years. 6 years since he hadn't put a foot on this island. He sighed and sat down between the two graves. Oh, how he missed them. Words couldn't describe his feelings, but he was glad that he wasn't completely alone. And he would never thank Denko Gigi enough for all he had done for him. But still one thing was unaccomplished. The look of determination was set up on his face as he took a 3-bladed dagger from his jacket, the one his dad had made himself, and outstretched his left hand forward. Aka-san, Otu-san, I swear on your tombs, he began, and with a swift motion with the dagger, cut a large gash on his left hand, not showing any sign of pain. That I will avenge you. I will not stop until those that took you away from me pay with their blood. Then he stood up and closed his eyes. I will not let anyone repeat what happened on this island. Never again. And with that he turned around and without looking back walked away and after giving a nod to the old man, teacher and apprentice, disappeared in yet another yellow flash. That day will mark the whole world. The 15 years old Naruto was sitting in the lotus position, meditating. Many things had changed since he left Satoka Island. He now was 5-6 feet, his blonde hair let loose stopping at his shoulders, his cerulean eyes were emotionless, his face was angular and handsome, having lost the baby fat. His body was lean and ripples of muscles could be seen under his tight shirt. But most of all, he had matured mentally. He was very serious and cunning, and every opponent would be taken with same extreme caution. Underestimating opponents could only lead to defeat. And he will not be beaten. He'll make sure of it. He had mastered all the 7 Rakishiki techniques and the Kenbun-shoku and Busashoku haki. The Hashoku haki was harder to control, he could only unleash a wave of it around him. Concentrating it in one point was too hard, even if he never stopped trying. Denko Gigi couldn't help him on this one. The Hashoku haki was quite rare, to say the last. Well, he had to find it by himself. Suddenly he sensed a presence, a very well-cancelled presence. But he could still sense it nonetheless. What is it, Gigi? The young man asked, without opening his eyes. Come, I have things to show you. Denkoku said, and without waiting for an answer walked away. That surprised the young blonde, because his gramps would always compliment his good use of the Kenbun-shoku haki, and for him to walk away without even waiting for a reply was even stranger. Whatever it was, that matter was serious. Naruto stood up and walked back to their house. When he entered the living room, he saw Denkoku seated behind the dining table, some items spread on the said table. Without saying a thing, the blonde sat down across the old man and waited for him to begin. Finally the ex-admiral began. I know who is responsible for the attack on Satoka 8 years ago. He said, making Naruto frown in confusion. I knew it since your 11th birthday, but saying it at the time would have been useless. He continued, what do you mean, responsible? That golden lion bastard was the one that destroyed the island. That may be true, but you don't know the whole story. The old man continued. The mission Minato was sent to was to retrieve 23 devil's fruits, he said, making the blonde's eyes go wide. After 8 months, your father's crew found the last one of them and began returning toward Marineford. But during their way back, the man that sent them on this very mission called them and informed them that they have to return to Satoka Island and wait there with the cargo, saying that his men will come to retrieve it, but they never came. Instead, Shiki attacked the island, Naruto whispered, not believing what he was hearing. Do you mean that man, the one that sent them on the mission, was working with Shiki? Probably, but why? The young man asked. I think he wanted Shiki to have those fruits. I don't really know why, God alone can know what was going on in the twisted minds of those working in the world government. Denkoku said with disgust, but Shiki didn't get them, did he? No, your father destroyed them before Shiki arrived. You said you know who that man is. Who is he? The Namikaze asked, a dangerous glint appearing in his eyes. His name is Yoshiro Akano. He works in the world government. He is one of the dogs under the command of the Tenryubito. Explained the old man. The world government, you say? The blonde whispered dangerously. Naruto, don't act on anger. Think deeply about what you want to do. You know perfectly well that the moment you said that this man was responsible for my father's death, his fate was sealed. The young man snapped back. You promised to not stop me once the time came. Well, the time has come, Naruto replied, standing up. He began pacing in the living room when suddenly he stopped dead. So that was the reason you said that I didn't need more than being a vice captain? Stated the blonde. You had said that every vice captain had a special duty, that once in a while the fleet admiral would assign a vice captain to guard a member of the world government. Naruto laughed a mirthless laugh and a predatory smirk formed on his face. You knew from the beginning, you old bastard. The same smirk appeared on Denkoku's face as he nodded. Well, then I have a double reason to become a marine. The Namikaze said. What else? I will teach you the Hurration, the ex-admiral simply stated, causing the blonde smirk to widen. Finally, sit down, that will take time. The old man said, to which the young man nodded and complied. As you know, the Hurration is a space-time traveling technique. Your father discovered it by accident, to say the truth, when he was using the Busoshoku haki to boost his speed. You already know how good he was with the haki, so it was no surprise when the speed at which he could move got greater and greater. Well, one of those days, his speed surpassed every law of physics and he entered a pseudo-space-time where everything was frozen apart from him. The problem was that he couldn't control where he was going or how much time he remained in that space-time. So every time, he was found completely exhausted in many different places. Not only a mile or two away, no, sometimes he wound up on another islands, or worse, in the ocean. Anyway, I advised him to see someone knowledgeable. And he, as I advised, he asked Vegapunk for help. The scientist accepted, of course, having discovered something new. He, along with Minato, created a little special device that allowed Minato to guide his energy toward that device when he was in the space-time. Vegapunk created thousands of those things, but your father made him promise to not reveal the secret of his now newly named Hurration. A promise that he still keeps. Denkoku explained and opened one of the wooden boxes on the table, showing its contents. Naruto took one of them and watched it closely. It looked like a little chip with New Mexico engraved in it. New Mexico, like Namikaze. Minato? The blonde asked, to which the old man nodded. Well, let's go then. You have to teach it to me, I'm not completely done. Denkoku said, making Naruto sit down again. Your father gave me another thing that he wanted you to have. He continued, showing the second wooden chest. The young Namikaze opened the chest and saw a fruit. No, he whispered, it is, Naruto, a devil fruit. The blonde continued, mesmerized by the strange item. That Tsuchi no Mi. Denkoku said. You don't have to eat it now, or ever. Minato wanted you to have it, but he was actually given that fruit by an old woman when he was on mission. It is your choice alone, Naruto. But don't forget the price to pay, the ex-admiral said before standing and leaving the room. The blonde took the strange pear-shaped brown fruit in his hand and watched it closely. It had strange greenish swirl-like motifs. So, you can grant me even more power, but would make me unable to swim. A devil fruit indeed. So, how are we going to Marineford? Asked Naruto, zipping his rucksack. Hurration simply stated his grandfather, you're becoming more and more lazy with years, Gigi. I think your old age is really catching up on you. The blonde said with a smirk before bending his head to the left and easily evading the bottle that was launched his way. Shut up, Gaki. I can still kick your sorry ass. HM. Laughed the Namikaze, but we're not going to Marineford. Where then? I want to visit an old friend of mine. Denkoku answered, that's fine with me. I'm not really in a rush. All right then. Let's go. The ex-admiral said, putting a bag over his shoulders. Naruto looked around the house for the last time and a small smile formed on his face. This would be his last time on this island. The island where Denkoku made a warrior out of him. Turning away, the blonde took a hold of his grandfather's shoulder and they disappeared in a yellow flash. After they left the space-time, the Namikaze looked around him and rose an eyebrow. He silently followed the older man, but couldn't resist to speak after a few seconds. What the hell? We are in a freaking windmill country or what? Well, actually we are in the windmill village, fuchsia. Dinkoku answered with a smile, causing Naruto's eyes to twitch. Then shaking his head, he continued to walk. After a while of walking, the old man stopped. We are in the right place. He said, "Ha, party's bar?" The blonde asked. My friend said that he will meet us here. The ex-admiral said, entering the little bar. His grandson closely following. The place was quite full, meaning that the bar was famous in the village, or was the only one. Naruto would more likely go for the latter. After they were seated at the bar, the bartender, a young woman with dark green hair, maybe a few years his senior, approached them. What would you like, sirs? She asked. Sake. Simply answered Dinkoku, to what she nodded and turned toward the mysterious blonde. Naruto, for his part sensing the young woman's gaze, turned toward her, very slowly, and began staring her in the eyes, without making a sound. The bartender seemed curious and held the stare. They stayed that way for a couple of seconds, then Naruto finally smirked, making the young woman blush and turn away. A chop of beer will do. The blonde said, the smirk still adorning his face. And with a short hi, the green-haired bartender walked away, catching the amused expression on his grandfather's face. Naruto's smirk only widened. A minute later, she was back with their commands and disposed it before them. Without losing time, the ex-admiral began drinking his sake and Naruto, following his example, took some gulps of his beer. It tasted quite good, to say the truth. The bartender approached and sat across from them, making Naruto raise his eyebrow. You're not from here. It's the first time I'm seeing you. She said, answering their silent question. What got you so far in the East Blue? She continued, kindly. We are here to see an old friend of mine. Dinkoku answered. Hey, Makino-chan. Will you go out with me? Cried a man with a bottle in his hand across the bar, toward the bartender. The said woman turned in his direction, rolling her eyes. I'm sorry, but no, Ginjo. She answered. Oh man. That was the 108th time she said no. Exclaimed another man. Poor Ginjo. Said another one, tapping comfortingly the Ginjo fellow on his back. When Makino returned her gaze toward the two strangers, she saw the blonde watching her, a charming smile adorning his face. The green-haired bartender blushed for the second time and turned away. Who is this friend of yours? She asked. After recompassing herself, Dinkoku opened his mouth to answer, but stopped and a smile appeared on his face. And as to answer the confusion on the young woman's face, the door to the bar opened and a massive muscular old man, wearing a suit, entered. I can see you are still your punctual self. The ex-admiral said, without even looking at the new person. Wahahaha. You know me too well. The new man said, taking a seat to their left. Makino-chan, sake please. To what she nodded and left for the command. Naruto, I present you Vice Admiral Monkey D. Garp, the hero of Marines and an old friend of mine. The ex-admiral said. So this is your grandson, Dinkoku? Asked Garp, outstretching his hand toward the blonde, which shook it in a vice-like grip, surprising the Vice Admiral. Namikaze Naruto. The young man said. It's an honor to meet you, Vice Admiral. Making the old man nod. So, what is the favor you talked about? Asked Garp, taking a sip of the sake that Makino disposed in front of him. Naruto will be joining the Marines. The Kanahaza answered. I want for you to watch over him in Marineford. Well, I can do that. The Vice Admiral said. But what is your goal? He asked, turning toward the blonde. To protect the world from those that wants to disturb the peace. Truthfully answered Naruto with haha. A noble goal indeed. Exclaimed Garp. Wish my grandkids would be like you. He continued, with a sigh. But no, they wanted to become pirates. Well, my old friend. Time has come for us to leave. Dinkoku said, so soon? Asked the Vice Admiral. I thought you would rest here for a few days before leaving. He continued. I'm sure the trip from wherever you came to here was exhausting. He finished, making Dinkoku laugh. Don't worry about that, old man. The ex-admiral said. You're the one to talk, Garp responded, with a smirk. Then they stared at each other for a few seconds, as if silently talking between themselves, and the Vice Admiral nodded. Let's go. Naruto, the young Namikaze, nodded and approached the Ginjo fellow, making the bartender raise an eyebrow. Never give up and never back down from a challenge. He said to the man, making a new determination shine in his eyes. With it he put his bag on his back and smiled, a real smile toward the green-haired woman, making her smile in return. And without further ado, he left the bar and began waking away, catching with Dinkoku. But only after a few steps, he could hear the brouhaha in the bar. Hey, Makino-chan. Will you go out with me? I'm sorry, but no, Ginjo, oh man. That was the 109th. Naruto smiled and a second later, he disappeared along with his grandfather. So, that's Marineford, the Namikaze stated with awe. Dinkoku stopped before the main doors and faced the blonde. I will leave you here, Naruto. You'll find your way easily enough. The ex-admiral said, to which the young man nodded. Use the chips and place them in strategic points. I took 100 of them myself. Your father had already put some in here, but having more will not hurt then, he sighed and approached the blonde, taking him in a hug. Be careful, Neri-chan. The hard stuff is just beginning. Don't lose your cool and never jump in a fight without thinking. The ex-admiral said, making the young man nod. Make your parents proud. He finished, letting go of Naruto. Turning away, he began walking away when the Namikaze called him out. Hey Denko Jiji, where will you go? Water 7, the old man answered without turning around. Good luck. And with that, Kanahaza Denkoku, ex-admiral of the marine, disappeared in a yellow flash. Naruto turned toward the main doors and began walking toward Marineford. Well dad, I'm a step closer to the goal. Chapter 3, Revelation. A blonde man wearing a completely black suit with a blue tie and a white marine coat overall, with justice written on its back, was walking through the streets of Marineford. His walk was casual, but with an air of confidence. People of lower rank acknowledged his presence by a quick salute, to which he nodded. And once he arrived to the main building of the marine quarters, he vanished in a burst of speed, only to reappear on the roof of the said building, the highest point of Marineford. Without further ado, he lied comfortably on the roof and closed his eyes. It was his favorite spot. Here he could lie down and relax without being disturbed, or even hide from his subordinates or chiefs when they were annoying him. He smiled. Finally he was close. After years of hardworking, he was another step closer to his goal. Soon, those bastards would pay. Suddenly he sensed a presence, but relaxed after discovering who that was. What are you going to do? The newcomer asked. Well, nothing. What should I be doing, Hina-chan? The blonde answered without opening his eyes. You know perfectly well about what Hina is talking about, the pink-haired woman exclaimed, exasperated. You are preparing something big. To say the truth, I'm waiting. The man answered simply. What are you waiting? You never like to sit down without doing something, Naruto-kun. Hina stated with a frown. Oh, but I still don't like to wait. I'm waiting the signal, that's all. What signal? Hina is confused. I may have discovered Shikey's lair, the blonde said, causing the woman's eyes to widen. That world government dog can wait for a little longer, he will not disappear. But Shikey, he is a sneaky bastard. No one heard from him for a decade. He can be really patient. But so can I. So where is he? He had made his HQ on an island that he made fly with his devil fruit's powers. I still don't know its exact location. It's not very easy to find a sky island in the Grand Line. Naruto said. Do you think he is in the Grand Line? Of course. Jiji always said that man couldn't stand the weak seas. No. His HQ could be only in the Grand Line. The blonde explained. And once I get the exact location. Hina doesn't like the idea of you going alone. What is it? Are you worried about little old me, Hina-chan? Naruto said with a smirk, standing up. Of course Hina is worried, you idiot. She exclaimed. Hina will have too much work if you die. She added with a smirk of her own, making Naruto face fall. Thank you. I feel so loved. The blonde exclaimed, with a hurt expression on his face and his right hand on his heart. But then he stopped his theatrics and he became serious. It is my personal duty to stop him, no one's else. And even if I wanted to take you with me, it would cause only complications. Naruto explained. I will not even let my crew come with me. If you were them on the battlefield, I wouldn't be able to focus on Shikey and go all out, being afraid to hurt you. No. I will do it alone. The pink-haired captain tightened her fists but said nothing. She knew he was right. She would only get in his way. It was hard to accept, but she knew it was the truth. They may be both captains, but the power gap between them was immense. She was a marine captain, and he was a titan. No one had really seen the extent of his powers apart from her, of course, and maybe a certain admiral. In the 10 years Naruto was in the Marines, he had done everything to rise through the ranks at an alarming rate. Because passing from seaman recruit to captain in 10 years was close to impossible. He practically rose a grade every year. He was considered a genius. But still, she was the only other person apart his grandfather that knew of his real power and many of his other secrets. He had faith in her and she would be damned before she betrayed his trust. But even knowing all that didn't mean it was easy to accept. She felt completely useless and that feeling wasn't a nice one. With a sigh, she drew a cigarette from her suit and put it in her mouth. With her right hand she took the lighter in hand and approached it to the cancer stick, switching it. But before the flame could ignite the cigarette, she sensed a slight breeze that put out the fire, and not a second later Naruto's hand was holding her right hand, preventing her from resuming her previous action. I don't like it when you smoke, Hina-chan. He said, staring at her eyes. She in return stared at him, and they stayed that way for a few seconds. Finally she admitted defeat and let him take the cigarette from her mouth, which the blonde threw away without hesitation. One day I'm seriously going to kick Smoker's ass for being such a bad influence on you, the Namikaze said, with an exasperated smile, to which the pink-haired captain giggled. Naruto then turned away and stared in the distance. A few moments later, Hina stood at his side and did the same. He hadn't changed one bit since their first meeting, 10 years ago. Number FLASHBACK number. It was already a week since Naruto had integrated the Marine Academy, and he knew absolutely no one. Well, he wasn't here to make friends, so that didn't really matter. In the past week he had learned a lot about the hierarchy in the Marines and the word government. It was already a good start. Right now he was sitting on a bench with many books in his rucksack to his right, reading one of them, Laws. Word Government Edition. When suddenly a young man with grey hair sat down at his left. He was quite muscular and wore a white and blue marine jacket, blue jeans and military boots. He was smoking 2 cigars, and the smoke from them began rapidly spreading around him. Naruto frowned, and without turning his eyes away from the book, he spoke up. "Excuse me, but could you take another seat or put off the cigar? I'm not very fond of cigarette smoke." The man didn't even acknowledge the blonde's presence, as if he wasn't even here. And if there was one thing Naruto hated more than pirates, it was to be ignored. The Namikaze slowly closed the book and turned toward the gray-haired man. He looked close to being 20-something. But age mattered rarely in those situations. "I asked kindly enough. What should I do now? Move you myself?" The blonde asked in a very calm voice. The said man, that was leaning his head back until now, raised an eyebrow. And after seeing Naruto's age, chuckled and returned to his previous state. People that were close enough to hear their conversation were looking at the Namikaze like he was crazy. Naruto, for his part, was fuming inside, but his still perfectly calm facade was on his face, betraying nothing. That man. Who did he think he was? Just because he was older, looked like had some fighting capacities, and had some sense of style, he thought he was better than others. He needed to be taught some manners. Naruto suddenly stood up and, doing a 180 turn on his left foot, gave a powerful kick to the bench, making it slide a dozen yards back, with the man still on it. People began stopping what they were doing to watch what was happening, and those that were there since the beginning were smiling with glee, knowing perfectly well what was going to happen. The blonde folded his arms on his chest and stared at the gray-haired man. The said man stood up with the same lazy attitude and stared back. "Do you know who I am?" The man finally asked with a smirk. "Should I?" The blonde threw back, causing some people to shake their heads. "He is Lieutenant Smoker, you fool!" cried out a man. "Really? Well, that still doesn't change anything," Naruto said, and observed as the gray-haired man began walking slowly toward him. His walk was confident, showing that he wasn't afraid of being hit or attacked from any direction. That could mean that he had eaten a devil fruit and its powers made him intangible or insensitive to hits. So, he may be a Paramecia or Logia user. Secondly, his steps were heavy, which was different from people that had mastered the speed techniques. So, he probably wasn't very quick. And finally, his arrogant expression. That could mean that he wasn't used to being beaten. Too easy. "You hope to beat me, kid?" Smoker asked, the smirk still present. "Hope? Whoever talked about hoping? I'm going to sweep the floor with you," Naruto replied. "I didn't want it to take such scales, but people like you have to be put in their places. Haha. You can't even hit me, kid. I'm Smoke and you can't hit Smoke." So he was a Logia type. Well, the more humiliation the better. One of a sudden, Naruto disappeared from sight in a remarkable show of speed, only to reappear in front of Smoker. Without wasting a second, he delivered a powerful punch to the lieutenant's face, sending him 30 yards back and crashing in trash can, surprising everyone around them. "Say that again, asshole." The more surprised of course was Smoker himself, as he stood up and wiped the blood from his cracked lips and nursed his sore jaw. How that little bastard managed to hit him. He was a Logia type, for heaven's sake. Wait, so the kid could use haki, and the speed at which he attacked was more than impressive. Damn him. He wouldn't be able to win against a haki user that was faster than him and maybe even stronger. How that little punk could have so much power. "White blow!" the lieutenant cried out as he extended his hands forward. Instantaneously both his fists were launched toward the blonde at high speed, Smoke following them. Naruto for his part only blurred from sight, easily escaping the attack, to reappear behind the gray-haired man and delivering a quick kick to his back that sent Smoker some yards forward. The lieutenant rapidly stood up, adorning a new bruise on his face, and launched another attack wide out. Suddenly clouds of smoke began escaping his hands and began rapidly flying toward Naruto, in seconds engulfing him entirely. Then with a motion of his hands, Smoker began condensing his smoke in hopes to ensnare the little brat. But it was like the blonde's body was made of stone. Whatever he tried, he couldn't manipulate the boy's body. That was getting annoying. "White spark!" he cried out as he turned his entire body into smoke and began charging his opponent at high speed. And when he was only inches from the blonde, he launched his hand in a punching motion, but just before hitting the target, a hand appeared from the smoke and caught his fist in a vice grip. And before Smoker knew it, he was sent 40 yards back by a very painful punch to his jaw. After hitting the wall, he dissipated into smoke and reformed his body. After some seconds again the blonde blurred from sight and not a second later, he appeared at the lieutenant's side with one hand on his shoulder, painfully squeezing it. Smoker tried to dissipate but couldn't. It was like his powers weren't responding. Like when he was touched by seawater. I'm sure you're regretting your arrogance right now, aren't you, Lieutenant Smoker? The blonde whispered. I can continue with my threat and lower your esteem by several notches. But, I don't really feel the need to attract too much attention to my little self, having arrived only a week ago. Then, the Namekiz released his grip and began walking back toward his rucksack. As you can see, relying too much on your devil fruit powers isn't very wise. Be careful in the future. He launched back, without turning around. As he was putting his books back in the bag, he could hear the discussion around him. Whoa. Have you seen that? He was able to land kicks on a Logia type. I can't believe Lieutenant Smoker let him go off the hook like that. Who in the hell is that guy? I don't know, but I sure as hell will discover. Naruto sighed and put the rucksack on his back. So much for not getting attention. He should be more careful in the future. Starting a fight with a higher ranked marine wasn't very wise. Finally, when he was a good 100 yards away from the others, he was stopped by a young woman. She had long pink hair that were reaching down her back. She was tall and slim, and quite frankly, she was gorgeous. Hina is impressed. She said, making the blonde raise an eyebrow. It's the first time Hina sees someone land a hit on Smoker-kun. Smoker-kun. Well, the lieutenant isn't very well-mannered, to say the last. The blonde said. And you are? Hina, she simply answered. Naruto rolled his eyes. As if it wasn't obvious. I was talking about your rank, he explained, as if talking to a child. Lieutenant. She answered, causing the blonde to cringe. Damn it. The next time someone talked to him, he would ask for their grade before starting the conversation. Seeing his expression, the pink-haired young woman giggled. Hina finds you amusing, she said, to which he rolled his eyes. Finally, after a few silent seconds, she spoke anew. Why are you reading so much? Seaman recruits rarely go to the library. Hold your friends close, but your enemies closer, simply answered Naruto, before walking AWAY number flashback END number. She smiled at the memory and turned toward the blonde. How will you leave Marineford? Sengoku Dono will never let a captain go after a pirate of Shikey's caliber. She asked. Oh, but he will not know it until it's too late to stop me. Wait 5 days after my depart and tell him where I went. The Namekiz said, and if he finds your absence strange sooner than 5 days and convokes Hina. The pink-haired captain asked. In that case, you play the blank card. Deny any knowledge about my absence. The young man answered. Hina understands, but still doesn't agree with your choice. Well, what can I say? It's hard to please you, Naruto said with a large smirk. Idiot. Where is Smoker anyway? Smoker-kun is on the base in Lobetown. Hina answered. Oh my. That's quite far from here. He must have annoyed Sengoku somehow. The blonde said, a large grin adorning his face, to which the young woman smiled. Oh, I think it's for me, Naruto said, making Hina frown. And as if to answer her mute question, a man appeared on the roof in a burst of speed. He had black short hair, brown eyes and a golden earring in his left ear. He was of the same age as Naruto himself, notably 25 years old. He wore a red suit with a white marine coat over his shoulders. His name was Senko Gyo, and he was the vice captain of Naruto's crew, the Shunji Hakaku Buntai. Captain? Good news. The man exclaimed, then seeing the presence of the pink-haired woman, he bowed his head. Captain Hina. And after seeing Naruto nod, Senko continued, we discovered the exact location. It's not very far from Sandy Island. Perfect. Off we go then. The blonde said, clapping his hands together. Then turning toward Hina he spoke again. You know what to do. To which she nodded. Good luck. And don't die, or Hina would be very mad. The blonde disappeared from sight and appeared behind the woman captain, giving her a hug. Don't worry, Hina-chan. Naruto exclaimed. Then letting go of her he walked toward his subordinate, which was watching him with rapidly blinking eyes. Don't look at me owlishly. Do you want me to kick your ass? And no sir, the dark-haired man exclaimed, causing Naruto to roll his eyes. Shut up, the blonde said, putting a hand on Senko's shoulder. Before they disappeared in a yellow flash, Hina shook her head with a small smile adorning her beautiful face as she calmly walked away from the roof. Naruto and Senko appeared on a marine ship a second later. His ship. People were busily running in every direction, preparing for their imminent depart. And when they saw the captain and vice captain appear, everyone stopped what they were doing to salute the Namekiz. Captain Namekiz. They cried out in chorus. Oh gentlemen, ready to go? He asked in a cheerful voice. All is ready, Captain. We can leave at your notice, said a short brown-haired young man, approaching the blonde. Perfect. Then give the signal, Hentaro. The Namekiz said to the man. Oi, raise the anchor. We're leaving. Naruto smiled as he watched his subordinates. He was really the captain. He had after all chosen every one of them one by one. After Sengoku made him captain 3 years ago, the Namekiz proposed to the fleet admiral a new idea. Create a special crew which main role would be to capture criminals in the whole world. A special unit that would be quick and effective in its work. And being the Ogun Shoku Kisai golden prodigy, that proposal was easily accepted by the world government. So without losing time, he chose promising youngsters from the Marine Academy or from others not important crews, trained them and created the Shunji Hakaku Buntai or Instantaneous Capture Squad. That name was given to them by the odd seaman recruits for their very high rate of instant captures of pirate crews. The Shunji Hakaku became famous very quickly, placing them as the most feared marine crew. Their methods very not hidden. They were quick, ruthless and very effective. But they had one golden rule imposed by their captain, never kill if you can capture, that was their motto. And in the last 2 years, 40% of prisoners that were sent to impel down were caught by the Shunji Hakaku Buntai. But even they would not come with him on Shikey's HQ. They were strong and their teamwork was perfect, but they weren't strong enough for Shikey. Without speaking about the problems that would cause. If they came with him, he wouldn't be able to go all out and destroy that bastard's base. No. Better go alone. Suddenly he was cut from his musings by a voice. Captain, what is it, Dina-chan? The blonde asked, the only female marine on his crew. She was of medium height with a beautiful face, had mid-back long crimson hair, yellowish eyes that were covered by rectangular glasses, 2 pearl earrings on each ear. She wore grayish tight jeans that went to her knees, a white blazer, unbuttoned at the top, showing her impressive cleavage, high-heeled black shoes, and had a large leather belt that lazily hung on her waist, to which were attached 2 sheathed daggers made from sea stone. She was the second fastest member of the Shunji Hakaku after Naruto and Senko, and was the fastest blade in Marineford. Are you still adamant on going alone? Yes. And whatever you say or do, you can't make me change my mind, the blonde said, still watching the horizon. Well, maybe, unless if you get in your undies and dance the cha-cha-cha for me. Naruto continued, turning toward her with a mischievous smile on his face. He was so certain that his idea would irk her again and that she would try to cut him, that at seeing her unbutton one button of her blazer, his eyes widened. In normal cases, she would try to cut him with one of her daggers after he launched one of his ridiculous ideas, but seeing that she was ready to accept one of them. Well, something wasn't right. What is it? He asked her. Take us with you. You can't just walk in a highly protected base alone. You think you can fight Shikey's entire army and then fight the Golden Lion himself? Are you insane? The woman cried out, her accumulated worries making her even angrier. I can't take the risk of all of you getting hurt. He simply stated, gazing at her, but we are ready. Were all those years you trained us for nothing? We are ready. It's not a matter of you being ready or not. This time it's not like the missions we took to capture pirates. This time, I'm going there to kill. Shikey already escaped Impel Down. That place wouldn't be able to hold him anymore. And even if it could, my vow will not allow me to let him live. I vowed to kill him, and I will. Naruto said with a dark look. I'm going alone, end of discussion. And with that he turned around and walked toward his personal quarters. The red-haired woman stood there, unmoving, with the rest of the crew around her, having seen the whole exchange. Suddenly on them spoke up. Hey Dina-chan, if you're still okay for the dance, I'm more than ready. Hentaro said with a goofy grin on his face to answer his proposal. She slowly buttoned up her blazer and vanished in a burst of speed. A second later, the short young brown-haired man was sent flying abroad with a cry of pain. Without giving anyone a second glance, Dina walked away. That's when the rest reacted. Damn it. He is a devil fruits user. Cried one man. Quick. We have to save that idiot. Cried out another, before a pair jumped in the ocean to save their unfortunate crewmate. Damn it. It was only 3 days since Naruto-kun had left Marineford and Sengoku Dono had already remarked his absence. And now Hina was called in his office. The pink-haired woman entered the office of the fleet admiral after an enter and walked toward his table. You called Hina, Sengoku Dono? She asked, looking around the room. There were Admiral Akainu and Admiral Kizaru, along with Vice Admiral Garp. What were 3 elites of Marineford doing here? Naruto's absence couldn't be that serious, could it? I remarked that Captain Namikaze was missing. And I don't remember him asking me to go on another mission to hunt criminals. So that could mean only one thing. He left to do something in secrecy. And I believe you could enlighten us on this matter, Captain Hina. The fleet admiral said, crossing his arms on his chest. Why do you think Hina will know of his bearings? The captain asked, a frown marring her beautiful features. It is not a secret that you are a great friend of his. Answered Sengoku. If someone knows where he disappeared, it would be you. The pink-haired woman narrowed her eyes and stared at the fleet admiral. The man held her gaze in return. Finally, she spoke again. Hina knows nothing about his disappearance. She said without blinking. Arg. That Brad and his too loyal friend are going to drive me insane. Sengoku cried out. Oh. But I thought you were already insane. Wahahaha. Exclaimed the Vice Admiral Garp. Wahahaha. I may have an idea. Suddenly spoke up Akainu, causing everyone in the room to turn toward him in surprise. After one of our spars, he spoke about finally having found a good trail. And it's not a secret that he wants to kill Shiki the Golden Lion since that day he attacked Sataka Island. Explained the Admiral. Oh my youngsters, those days seek too dangerous things. Admiral, Vizeru stated, why would he want to go there alone if he had really found Shiki's lair? Sengoku asked. Because he wants to be the one that kills him, answered Garp, all sign of amusement erased from his now serious face. He still wants to avenge his father's death, damn him. He is a mere captain. To fight against Shiki is a death wish. The Fleet Admiral exclaimed, you know perfectly well that he is much more powerful than a mere captain. Akainu remarked. He had trained the young man himself for a period of time, helping him to control the power of his devil fruit. And he, of course, knew of what Namikaze Naruto was capable of. Akainu, Kizaru. Take 2 ships and go after him. Sengoku ordered. We will never catch them in time. They have 3 days of advance on us. Borsellino stated, shaking his head in a lazy manner. I'm not asking you to stop him. That's a bit too late now. No, you will be his backup. The chief continued. My. We can never have a quiet moment with that man around. The sunglasses wearing Admiral stated, and turning around he began leaving, but suddenly he stopped. Hey Sengoku, you never said where that lair of his was. Indeed, Sengoku agreed, turning toward the only captain in the room. Where it is? He asked. Hina doesn't know. She answered, making Admiral Akainu shake his head, and Sengoku hit the desk out of anger. They will drive me insane. Someone knocked on his door as he was reading a book about the New World. Enter. He said calmly. The door opened and Senko entered the captain's quarters. Captain, we have arrived. We can even see the flying island from here. His second in command explained. Perfect. Naruto said. He stood up and putting his marine coat over his shoulders, left the room, closely followed by the vice captain. The Namikaze stood up on the deck and looked around. Indeed, the island Merve could be seen hovering miles high over the ocean. That brought a feral smirk to the captain's face. Finally he turned around and faced his crew that were waiting for his commands. Gentlemen, it is here that I leave you. Naruto began. From here, take Cap toward Drum Island and wait there for me. I surely will flash toward the ship after I'm finished. Yes, Captain, his crew chorused. Without further ado, he jumped on the railing and closed his eyes. And a few seconds later an earth column rose from the ocean. The blonde jumped upon it and giving a last quick salute to his subordinates, he willed the earth to move. Instantaneously, the pillar began rising at a high speed and soon enough he was no more than a little dot to the marine crew. Once the pillar was some hundreds yards higher than the flying island, Naruto jumped from it with a powerfully enhanced haki jump toward Merve. After mere seconds he began gaining more and more speed at his freefall, and when he finally landed on the island's ground, he created a great shock wave that made everything in the vicinity tremble, rising a great amount of dust. Once the dust was settled, one could see Naruto inside a giant crater, sweeping the dust off of his suit. Then looking around, he began walking toward the castle that was visible in the distance. That must be Shiki's HM. Perfect. Then, he vanished in a burst of speed. After he had made some miles in the island, he began sensing presences, a mass of them. Like a village. And soon, he discovered that he was right. Indeed, just before him stood a small village, but a village nonetheless. Damn it. Now, that was making his work even harder. What in heaven's name was an entire village doing on the island Shiki used as his HQ? Damn it. Now he couldn't destroy the entire island as he had hoped. Whatever his grudge against Shiki was, he couldn't destroy a village like that bastard had done. No. He had vowed that he would protect the world from that sort of things. With a sigh, he began walking toward the village when he sensed something approaching rapidly. And not a second later a giant panda-like bear jumped at him with something akin to intelligence in his eyes. Without batting an eyelash, Naruto continued on his route and just as the bear was going to tear him in two with his razor-like claws, an earth fist emerged from the ground and delivered a skull-shattering punch to the animal. The bear was rapidly sent backward and when he hit the hard ground he was already dead. When the marine captain was close enough to the village, he narrowed his eyes. Some sort of trees were contouring the village, but it was like it was expelling some sort of toxin. He had already seen something of the sort in Vegapink's laboratory. Slowly walking through the trees he entered the village. It was like a normal one, people were walking here and there, doing casual things, children were playing around, everything portrayed a happy village. But it was like it was fake. Like it was forced. Like the laughs and happy faces were all masks. Then suddenly Naruto remarked something. They all had feathers on their arms. What the? People began staring at him as he walked past them. Were they afraid of him? They must have remarked his marine coat. An Amicus approached a woman that was working on her laundry. Excuse me ma'am. He began. What is this place? You are in the village of Merve. She answered. But you already know that, as we aren't really on the ground, no. She continued with a gentle smile. Why is there a village on this island? Isn't this the base of operation of the pirate Shiki? He asked. Yes. The Golden Lion used his power to tear the ground on which we are from an island in East Blue 18 years ago and made it fly here. We are his prisoners since that day. We can't leave this place. The woman explained, causing Naruto to tighten his fists. That bastard. And why do you have feathers on yours arms? It's a mutation from the high attitude, we think. The woman answered. You should go now, sir. Or the visual den mushi would detect you. She continued, pointing toward a big den approaching. In response, the Namikaze blinked in its direction, and a second after, the den blacked out, scaring the people around it. Do you want to leave this place? He asked very seriously, causing the woman's eyes to widen. Of course we want. But we can't. I know an inhabited island big enough for your people to create a new village and live peacefully. And I have a mean to transport you there. Does that interest you? I don't know what to say. I can't decide for everyone. She answered, hardly believing her ears. Then go and tell everyone about my proposal. I will not wait eternally. The captain said. She nodded and rapidly ran away. The village elder approached the blonde with a frown on his face. What proves us that you're not lying? He asked. What proves us you're not worse than Shiki? Well, you have to see it by yourself then. Naruto said, and putting a Hurricane chip on the ground, he grabbed the old man's arm and they disappeared in a yellow flash. Seconds later, they reappeared on an island with a little mountain. This is an uninhabited island in East Blue. Said the blonde as the elder looked around. Yes, this will do. He said, turning toward the marine. Bring me back please. After they returned to the flying island, the old man explained everything and the villagers accepted and were ready to leave. Alright. The method I'm going to use is very draining on people that aren't trained to sustain such speed. So try your hardest to resist the pressure. Naruto explained. I will be taking 20 at a time, so make a circle around me and touch a part of my body and hold as tightly as you can. Alright, everyone ready? Let's go then. And with that, he along with 20 villagers disappeared in a yellow flash. Seconds later, they reappeared on an island with a little mountain. This is Sataka Island in East Blue. My home island. People have left this place 18 years ago because Shiki destroyed the village. Now it's yours. He said to the people around him. The elder of the village was among them and he approached the young captain with tears in his eyes. Thank you so much. You saved us all. We will never forget your help. He cried out, hugging the blonde. I will just ask you one favor. The Namikaze interrupted the man. There, on the top of the little mountain, there are 2 tombs, my parents' tombs. Take care of them. The old man nodded vigorously at that and with another nod, the blonde disappeared. A few seconds later 20 more were transported here. And 20 another with the same time interval. Half an hour later, Naruto touched the ground with the last villagers around him. His breath was ragged, sweat was purling on his face. But he was finally done. The Namikaze wiped the sweat with his sleeve and nodded toward the people he had saved for the last time before he disappeared in the now familiar yellow flash. Once he was back on Merve, he resumed his walk toward Shiki's HQ. The overuse of the Hurricane had strained his body and he felt a little lightheaded but a little headache wouldn't stop him. Now that innocent people were out of the harm's way, he could begin with it. He blurred out of sight. After arriving in front of the big castle, Naruto began walking toward the main doors. Some men were guarding it, but they never stood a chance as he disabled all of them with a burst of Hashoku haki. If he hadn't used so much energy transporting the villagers, he may have disabled them with more impressive means. But, well, fighting with style wasn't really an important matter right now. He closed his eyes and tried to sense Shiki. He must be in the central room with many other allied pirates if what Cinco had discovered was true. He resumed his walk and began literally making his path through the castle toward the center. He didn't have time to lose in this labyrinth. Finally, after a few minutes of destroying walls with haki charge punches, he arrived in front of the main room. And raising his right hand toward the doors, he launched a wave of haki, completely tearing the doors apart. That caused a big brouhaha to install in the chamber as he calmly entered. The blonde stopped in the middle of the room and launched a death glare toward the golden lion Shiki. He cried out over the noise. The old pirate's eyes widened after he saw the blonde's face. As if he had seen a ghost. Then after some seconds of thinking, he smiled, then laughed out loud. Jahahaha. You're that brat son. A second and I thought you were him. I have to agree, you look like him very much. The pirate exclaimed. What are you doing here, kid? Oh wait, I know you want to avenge your father. Jahahaha. Continued Shiki, angering the blonde marine. Your father was strong, kid. Very strong. He said. He had cost me an entire fleet and an arm. He finished, gripping his left shoulder. But that was years ago now. I'm ready to conquer the world. And not you, nor anyone else would be able to stop me. Did you hear me, kid? A dark look crossed Naruto's face and suddenly a great pressure fell over everyone like a heavy blanket trying to crush them. He then began to slowly walk toward Shiki. His every step echoing through the now silent room. My name is Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto, he began. And prepare yourself, Shiki, the golden lion, because I'm here for your life. He finished with a cry and giant shock wave escaped him, traveling through the whole island and rendering unconscious every living being on it apart one lone man. So you mastered the Hashoku haki. Impressive. Stated the old pirate. You are too calm for a man who is going to die. Naruto said, with narrowed eyes. You're not the only one that got stronger, kid. Explained Shiki, with a large smirk adorning his face. I wasn't wasting my time either. I mastered the powers of my devil fruit. You can't beat me. Suddenly, the marine captain vanished in burst of speed and reappeared to Shiki's left, launching his right fist toward the pirate's face. With a silent Shigen, the golden lion, awaiting something of sorts, raised his right hand and caught the punch, with a smile. The punch wasn't even as powerful as he had imagined it would. His smirk only widened. But he frowned, seeing the small grin on Naruto's face. Out of a sudden, like an aftershock, a wave of energy escaped from the marine's fist, sending the old pirate backward at breakneck speed, completely going through the wall behind him and landing on the ground. Outside. What the hell was that? If he didn't know that it was impossible, he would have thought the boy used fishman karate. Damn brat. That was something new. Suddenly, sensing the blonde approach at high speed, the pirate jumped in the air and began hovering. And less than a second later, the ground on which he stood a moment ago was now a big crater of destroyed earth. Out of nowhere, the marine captain appeared to his left, but the old pirate was prepared, so he launched his blade leg toward the blonde's face. The said blonde caught the sword with his left hand and in an impressive show of strength, threw Shiki toward the ground at high speed. The golden lion stopped his fall only inches from the ground and turned around to see Naruto fly toward him at breakneck speed. Shiki waited a few moments, and when the blonde was only some yards away, he rose an earth column on his path. The answer, the Namikaze only outstretched his right hand forward and passed through the pillar like it didn't exist, and less than a second later, the old pirate was sent backward, with a broken nose. After flying a few dozen yards, Shiki was able to stabilize himself in the air and glared toward the blonde. He was strong and very fast. But it wasn't anything he couldn't afford. He would crush the boy unless he could do the same speed technique as his father. If the brat could use the Hiraishin. My turn, kid. The pirate cried out, before launching himself toward the blonde at an incredible speed, slightly surprising the marine. When Shiki was only a few feet away, he made a 180 turn on himself and launched his bladed leg in a slashing motion. To say that he was shocked seeing Naruto bend backward, even before Shiki had finished his move, was an understatement. It was like the boy had seen right trough his attack Kenbenshoku haki. Rapidly, the pirate followed with a right hook, but the blonde only stepped a step back. Not losing his momentum, Shiki followed with a slash with his left leg, but like before, Naruto stepped away from the attack. Suddenly, the Namikaze retaliated by joining his fists in the middle and cried out, Rakushiki Ogi, Rakugan. Instantaneously, a devastating shock wave escaped the blonde's fists, completely going through Shiki. For an instant, it was like nothing happened because there weren't any visible damage, but the next, the golden lion began coughing blood as he fell to his knees. Naruto watched the old man in pain for a few seconds, then raised his right hand, prepared to finish the pirate's life, but he jumped in the air as a spike rose from the ground just under him. Not longer after, Shiki swept the blood from his face and stood up. A deadly look appearing on his bruised face, and just as the blonde touched the ground, hundreds upon hundreds of spikes began attacking him from the ground, to which the marine only jumped in the air and in a sweeping motion with his right leg launched a rankyaku, sending a sharp compressed blade of air that completely cut the spikes in half. More annoyed, the golden lion raised his only hand and two giant walls of earth rose at Naruto's sides and with another wave, launched toward him, hoping to crush the blonde. The marine captain vanished again, easily escaping the walls. But just as he reappeared, he sensed a presence very close. Wasn't it for his Kenbenshoku haki, and he wouldn't have been able to dodge the very quick slash with which Shiki hoped to cut him in half. So when Naruto was bent backward in an impressive show of flexibility, the blonde's eyes widened because he saw as Shiki's only hand touched his torso. That was his goal since the beginning. So it wasn't a surprise when the Namikaze was launched toward a rock at high speed. Being unable to control his body, Naruto rapidly emerged from the rumbles and blurred from view. When he reappeared behind the pirate, he was stopped dead in his track only inches away from hitting his target. With a cry of annoyance, the blonde vanished again, but just before reappearing some dozen yards away, he lost his balance as he was attracted toward the golden lion at high speed, completely surprising the marine. And as if in slow motion, Shiki watched as his sword cut through the surprised blonde captain. Naruto's eyes widened as he looked toward his chest, the pirate sword completely cutting through his heart. Game over. The golden lion said, a murderous grin adorning his face. Then his eyes narrowed because Naruto's horror-stricken face morphed into a predatory smile. Not a second later, the marine's arm began changing shape, becoming spear-like. And with a mighty movement, he launched his hand forward, cutting through the pirate's shoulder. Shiki cried in pain as it was the same place that the blonde's father has caused the same wound 18 years ago. Rapidly sliding his sword from Naruto, the golden lion jumped back a few dozen yards, holding his heavily bleeding wound with his only hand. Damn you. You have eaten a Logia-type devil fruit, haven't you? he cried out, trying to stop the blood, without success maybe was the blonde's nonchalant answer. Jahahaha. Well, then I know your weakness. Oh, and what is it? Seawater, Shiki answered with a grin, despite his still bleeding shoulder. And contrary to you, I can control water, he cried out, and with that a massive wave of water flew toward the Marine captain. Naruto rapidly turned around and faced the oncoming attack with raised fists. And just as the wave of water was only inches from him, he launched his fists forward with a loud shigen. The effect was instantaneous, as the skin of the blonde touched the water, a great shock wave completely evaporated the liquid. With a smirk, the Namikaze turned back toward the pirate. Then, the bond vanished and appearing to Shiki's side, launched a Rankyaku. The old pirate raised his hand and a solid wall of earth rose from the ground, but it did nothing to stop the condensed air blade as it cut through the wall as if it wasn't even there. Shiki reacted in time and jumped over the attack and began hovering in the air, but just a second later he sensed the blonde appear to his right and raised his hand in time to block the powerful kick, creating a shock wave at the contact. Flying backward, the old pirate waved his hand and with his devil fruit power, sent the marine toward the ground at high speed. Naruto, seeing the hard ground approach rapidly, uttered a silent geppo before vanishing from view. And just as he appeared behind the golden lion, his eyes widened because without having time to react, he was attracted toward a sphere of seawater just beside Shiki. With another wave from the old pirate and the Namikaze was completely imprisoned in the water, being unable to breathe and unable to move. So, how do you like that one, brat? Exclaimed Shiki with a large grin. You can't breathe, can't move and can't use your powers. So, tell me, how are you gonna avenge your father? The golden lion laughed for a few seconds but stopped at seeing the concentration on Naruto's face. The young man had closed his eyes and his hands formed into fists. Then suddenly, the marine captain's eyes shot open and wave of energy escaped his body, completely evaporating his water prison. Under the widened eyes of Shiki, the blonde fell to his knees, wet, exhausted and panting, but still alive and kicking. Slowly he stood up and glared toward the old pirate. Water may be my weakness, like for every devil fruit user, but you forgot that I'm still master in the Rakushiki and haki. You can't beat me, Shiki. Cried out the Naruto. Let's finish this. He continued and he lowered himself, spreading his legs apart for a better grip on the ground. Then, lifting his right foot, he took a step forward, saying aloud Tsuchi, Jishin. Earth, earthquake. And instantaneously, the flying island began shaking, several yards wide crack appearing here and there, some part of the ground sinking, some other raising, completely destroying the vicinity. Then lifting his left foot, he took another step forward, this time shouting, Tsuchi, Senju. Earth, battlefield, and the island began literally tearing apart. Giant chunks of earth began flying around the blonde which was standing, still on one of them. Shiki frowned and began hovering in the air. What was he planning? What are you trying to do, kid? He asked, looking around. Naruto, for his part, snapped a finger and everything began falling toward the sea. Then he turned toward the old pirate and spoke. At least I'm getting rid of anything you would use to extend your survival. Coldly answered the marine. Without earth nor water at your disposal, you will no longer be able to evade me and my attacks. And contrary to you, I don't need my devil fruit's powers to kill you. He continued, using Shiki's own words, don't forget that I'm still a swordsman. The golden lion shouted with anger. Well, let's see how you fare without your devil fruit. Naruto cried out before vanishing in a burst of speed. The next instant, he was behind Shiki with a sword made of earth in his hand. The old pirate rapidly turned around and blocked the oncoming attack with a loud cling. You forgot one little detail, Namikaze, I still can control your body. Shiki exclaimed and willed the blonde to fly left, directly toward the oncoming slash with his left leg. Naruto raised an eyebrow and just let the attack pass through him, and you forgot that I'm a Logia type, calmly explained the young man as his body rapidly repaired itself. Then he disappeared again only to reappear to the pirate's left. Rankyaku. He cried out, launching a compressed blade of air toward the golden lion. Shiki lifted his only hand in front of him to block the attack, but he was nevertheless sent a few dozen yards backward, with a large gash adorning his arm and torso. Damn you, little brat. He cried out, gritting his teeth in pain. Then looking around he spotted one of his lesser islands still hovering in the air. With resolution, he darted toward it at breakneck speed, closely followed by Naruto. After stepping on its hard ground, he turned toward the blonde and lifted his hand, telling him to stop. Well then, kid. Let's do it the old way. He began the old way. What is on your mind, Shiki? The 3 strikes, the golden lion answered. You know what that means, don't you? Yeah, we must exchange 2 strikes, and the third is the killing blow. The old way of duels to death, Naruto explained. Why this sudden change of heart? You are a worthy opponent, one of the best I ever encountered, I have to admit. And I can see how your every strike gets closer and closer to kill me. If I die, I want it to be with honor. And who knows, maybe at the 3rd strike, I will be the one giving the death blow. Honestly, answered Shiki. Be it your way then. It doesn't matter to me which way I kill you. The blonde said. The golden lion rose a few feet above the ground and with grated teeth detached the sword on his right leg. Still hovering, he swung the blade around, getting the feelings of wielding it back. Naruto, for his part, plunged his right hand in his ragged suit and took a three-bladed dagger. The one his father has made ready? Shiki asked. Ready. The Namikaze cried out. Then, they launched toward each other at breakneck speed. The two warriors met with their blades with a loud clang and then disappeared from sight. A moment later, the second clang was heard a dozen yards away from the previous. Then, they appeared 30 yards away from each other and in a last effort darted toward each other. Flying at breakneck speed, Shiki brought his sword forward. Naruto, outstretching his hand back, launched his dagger toward the golden lion like a bullet. When he was only yards away, the old pirate bent to the right and evaded the three-bladed dagger and with a smirk, swung his sword toward the marine captain. That's when the blonde disappeared in a yellow flash, completely surprising the old pirate. Less than a second later, Naruto appeared behind Shiki and taking hold of his father's dagger, plunged it in the pirate. The golden lion stopped dead in his tracks as he looked toward his chest, only to see the three-bladed dagger completely piercing his heart. The Namikaze, for his part, cringed, seeing that Shiki had cut in his side with his blade that he had in a reverse grip. Damn it, he had forgotten that the dagger was made from sea stone. Slowly, Naruto slid his dagger out of the pirate and took several steps back. The old man slowly turned toward the blonde and a smile appeared on his bruised face. Damn, you're good, Namikaze, he said, coughing blood. You won. With it, he fell to the ground. Naruto slowly approached him and with cold eyes looked toward the fallen warrior. Now, I only have to kill Akano to avenge my father, he said with an emotionless voice. Oh, Akano, the pirate asked, coughing even more blood. Akano jiha coughed. Jiha. Why are you laughing? Naruto asked, narrowing his eyes. You thought, cough, that I was working with Akano? A worm like him? Jiha cough. What do you mean? Exclaimed the blonde, his eyes widening. He was just a messenger dog. Then who? Tell me. The Namikaze cried out, shaking the pirate. Tell me. He coughed. Who? Then T10 said Shiki, but then he froze and his eyes glazed over, lifeless Nuo. Naruto cried out suddenly. The little island they were on began falling. Shiki was dead. Slowly standing up, the blonde concentrated all the haki he could muster and jumped forward. In the air, he needed speed to make a jump with the Hiraishin to his ship. So with several Geppo, he began flying at a breakneck speed. Then, when he was content with his speed, he concentrated and uttered Hirai, but he was cut off by a violent cough, bringing blood to his lips. His head began spinning as he began losing all his senses. Damn it. And with a loud splash, the marine captain Namikaze Naruto fell in the sea below. What if Naruto has golden haki in One Piece? Thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel and leave a like if you guys need the next part. Comment down, and thanks for watching the video and see you guys in the next video.